Grey and drizzly along the south coast, but further north something a little brighter. Some good spells of sunshine for eastern Scotland, much of Northern Ireland. Western Scotland, though, seeing a few showers keeping going here, and they'll pep up once more later in the day. Temperature-wise, as I said, higher than yesterday, double digits across the south, generally further north, 7 to 8 Celsius. The winds are lighter, though, than they have been, so it doesn't feel as cold as recent days. We are going to see the breeze picking up along the south coast with further rain moving in here through the evening, and the showers further north are going to become more extensive, so many places turning fairly wet by Saturday morning. The winds will also be picking up. Temperatures not dropping too far, 3 to 5 Celsius, but it's going to feel cold on Saturday because of the strength of the wind and because there'll be quite a few showers around too. Initially pretty wet across eastern England, and then this zone of showers coming into parts of northern England, southern Scotland. Some snow likely on the hills, but it won't rain all day. There'll be some bright and sunny spells, particularly across the southeast in the afternoon. Central parts of Scotland also seeing good spells of sunshine too. But it will be breezy, quite a cold wind picking up, especially on western coasts. Still some wet weather over northeast England, with the possibility of a bit of snow on the hills for a time through Saturday evening. Some uncertainty about the extent of that rain, though, during Saturday night. Otherwise, a few showers keep going in the west. That low pressure ebbing away on Sunday. Many places in the west dry on Sunday, but eyes out in the Atlantic as a deep air of low pressure could bring a windy spell next week.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
And welcome to the briefing with me, Isabel Oakeshott. Lots coming up as the government ramps up the vaccine booster programme. Is it OK to ask questions about the policy? Plus, should we grant Commonwealth citizenship to our Commonwealth soldiers? And we ask why the UK has been given such a rubbish Christmas tree from Norway. Is it cock-up, conspiracy or bar humbug? But first, it's the news with Rhiannon.
I'm Rhiannon Jones. This is your news at 12:03. One of the UK's most senior counter-terrorism officers has told GB News the public could play a vital role in preventing another terror attack. Scotland Yard's Deputy Assistant Commissioner Matt Twist is urging the public to be extra vigilant in the run-up to Christmas, but he says people shouldn't change their plans. The current terror threat level of severe means another incident is highly likely. After 2 attacks in a month, enhanced police patrol will be operating in town and city centres over the festive period.
I mean, this is the first Christmas in a couple of years where lots of people are going to be together. There's lots of big events going on, and we want people to go and enjoy them. But we also know that the terrorist threat level has been raised to severe after the two awful attacks we've seen, one in Essex and one in Liverpool. And we just want the public to be vigilant. We mean that severe means an attack is highly likely, but it doesn't mean they shouldn't go about carrying on their normal business. What it means is that if you're worried about something, if you're suspicious about something, then tell us about it.
A damning report into the Euro 2020 final held at Wembley has described it as a day of national shame. The independent review commissioned by the FA found a series of near misses that could have caused serious injury or death at the match between England and Italy. Around 2,000 ticketless fans forced their way into the national stadium. The report said there'd been a collective failure by all organisations involved in planning for the final. The killers of 6-year-old Arthur Labinjo Hughes are due to be sentenced later at Coventry Crown Court. Prosecutors said the little boy suffered a campaign of torture before he died of an unsurvivable brain injury in June 2020. Arthur's stepmother, Emma Tustin, was convicted yesterday of murder. His father, 29-year-old Thomas Hughes, was found guilty of manslaughter. The Conservatives have held the seat of Old Bexley and Sidcup in a by-election despite a significantly reduced majority. Local councillor Louis French is the area's new MP with just a majority of under 4,500. That's down from 19,000 in the last election. The death of former Cabinet Minister James Brokenshire triggered the by-election. In his acceptance speech, Mr French promised to continue his predecessor's work. The Pfizer and Moderna vaccines give the best overall booster against COVID-19, that's according to a new study. It found that those two jabs led to the most significant rise in immunity levels. Omicron wasn't tested in the trial, but experts say immunity could mean that boosters offer good protection against the new variant. Retailers are making shocking and completely unjustified profits from fuel prices, a report has found. Motoring organisation, the RAC, says a fall in oil prices is not being reflected at the pumps, with major supermarket chains among the biggest offenders. Despite the wholesale price of petrol falling by 10 pence in November, forecourt prices increased to a record high of almost £1.50 per litre. The Prime Minister is sending the army to areas of Scotland and North East England to help those still impacted by Storm Arwen. A week on, across the UK, an estimated 16,000 homes are still without power. 130 troops will conduct door-to-door checks and provide support to remote communities. The Prime Minister of France has formally rejected Boris Johnson's request for British patrols on French beaches to help curb the migrant crisis. Jean Castex says his country can't allow British police officers or soldiers on its soil as it would compromise France's sovereignty. He also says that the UK should offer legal immigration paths into the country, reducing the risk of dangerous channel crossings. However, Mr Castex has offered to examine some of the other proposals put forward. Hundreds of thousands of people are suffering post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of the pandemic, a report has found. New data from the Royal College of Psychiatrists estimates there could be more than 200,000 cases across the UK following the pandemic. Experts say symptoms of PTSD include irritability, anxiety and dissociation, a feeling of being disconnected or numb. The report highlighted a particular concern for frontline healthcare workers and patients hospitalised with severe COVID symptoms. I'll have the latest headlines for you in half an hour, but for now it's back to the briefing with Isabel.
Coming up this hour on the briefing. As the government ramps up the vaccine booster programmes amid fears over the Omicron variant, people in this country and all over Europe are coming under unprecedented pressure to have their jabs. But what if you have concerns? Is it okay to ask questions? Plus, is this the saddest Christmas tree you've ever seen in a public place? We'll speak to MP on the all-party parliamentary group for Norway to get his take on this sorry Tannenbaum. And in the latest edition of The Cause, where I speak to public figures about issues close to their heart and show a different side of parliamentarians, we hear from former Veterans Minister Johnny Mercer on why he thinks Commonwealth soldiers should be given British citizenship. Give me your political briefing, send in your views and opinions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me @gbnews. Now, have you had your booster yet? And if not, haven't you got the message? You have to have it for your sake and for the sake of the nation. That's the government line. And if you have genuine concerns about being jabbed every few months, possibly for the rest of your life, have you had your booster yet? If not, haven't you got the message? You have to have it for your own sake and for the sake of the nation. And that is the government line. And if you have genuine concerns about being jabbed every few months for the rest of your life, or for that matter, about vaccinating young children, how do you feel about being labelled an anti-vaxxer? Well, let me tell you up front my position. I've had 2 jabs and soon I will probably, quite reluctantly, have a 3rd. Reluctant because I don't particularly like being blackmailed to have medical interventions, whether it's by politicians who tell us we have to have our vaccines in return for the Christmas we've all been looking forward to, or in return for being able to go on holiday, or whether it's pressure from the pharmaceutical industry, who quite clearly and undeniably have a multi-billion-pound vested interest in as many people as possible being jabbed as many times as possible. But anyway, I will have the 3rd injection, but I do defend my right, and anyone else's right, to ask difficult questions about the policy and about the vaccine itself, so that each and every one of us can make fully informed decisions. I don't believe it's right to silence reporting of side effects. After all vaccines and medicines can have side effects, and I don't think it's right to cancel people who dare refer to the fact that a very small number of people do sadly become very ill or even die as a result of these injections. Now, I want to emphasise that these numbers are very, very small. Very serious side effects are extremely rare, and getting the vaccine is still a good idea. But the reality is that anyone who expresses any concerns about any aspect of the vaccination programme is immediately smeared as an anti-vaxxer. People who ask questions are labelled selfish, irresponsible and even dangerous. Well, I think that's wrong. It is bullying, it is divisive and it is undemocratic. So I was delighted when someone inside the UK Health Security Agency leaked me a document which suggests that people in government are beginning to realise that smearing people who are vaccine hesitant is not the smartest way to go. The Cabinet Office document, which I have here, says, and I quote, that it is time to change how vaccine refusal is discussed. And I'm quoting from the document here, labels like anti-vax should be avoided, as should negative characterisations of vaccine-resistant groups. The leaked document says it's time to stop smearing these people as irresponsible and ignorant and start acknowledging that we all share a common goal to conquer this virus and get back to normal life. So the policy paper I've got is from the government's Behavioural Insights Unit, otherwise known as the Nudge Unit, and I couldn't agree with it more. And I wonder what you think about this. Email me your views at gbviews@gbnews. Earlier this week, the government published new guidance to support the detection and management of 2 heart conditions, myocarditis and pericarditis, that are associated with the vaccine. Again, I want to emphasise these are rare side effects, and the government acknowledge these as rare conditions following vaccination. Most patients who develop these conditions after the jab only have mild symptoms and they recover without treatments. There's nothing to get too alarmed about. However, and here's the critical bit, the document admits the long-term consequences of this condition after vaccination are as yet unknown. They acknowledge that there could be complications, in particular of myocarditis. So with me to talk about how we get the balance right between the undoubted protection offered by the vaccines and possible side effects in some groups is Dr. Renee Honderkamp, a London-based GP. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Renee. First of all, I want to ask you what you think about this leaked document that I've got here. It's quite rare to get leaked documents from inside the UK Health Security Agency. And when I saw this, I was quite heartened by it, actually, because this is the government's nudge unit saying, you know what, I'm not sure we're getting the messaging right on this, the tone. Is it really smart to label people who have concerns about the vaccine as selfish, as anti-vax? Is this the way to actually win people over? And I was very interested in your take on that.
Yeah. So I don't think it is, and I think we've seen that. And I think there's a knock-on effect from doing it. I think if you actually vilify people who up until now have always had the vaccines that they're asked to have always put forward their children from the vaccines, for the vaccines that they're meant to. I'm one of them. My daughter has had all of her vaccines and an extra one I paid for. I've always had my flu jab. But if you start calling those people anti-vaxxer because they're just questioning whether or not, A, they need this, do their children need it, should they be worried about anything, what you do is you alienate them because you don't give them any transparency on why you're asking them to do it, and you risk parents in the future not coming forward for the vaccines that we know are safe and tried and tested and save lives. And we're seeing that. We're seeing a drop-off in childhood vaccinations. So I think this is the first time that I've seen anything from the nudge unit which actually is sensible.
And acknowledging that, and unfortunately, I don't think, although this document is a few weeks old, I'm not sure that message has really got out there. So maybe we here on GB News can do a bit to do that and just say, look, this is the government's own advisors saying this is not the way to go. A bit I didn't read out from the document, it says it's time to start acknowledging the positive things that vaccine-hesitant parents do. They are loving parents who are thoroughly engaged. They are informed health consumers pursuing labour-intensive parenting, because it's not easy asking questions, is it? And they want to give their child the best outcome. So I think this is a really important message, particularly as discussion moves on towards what is the next group to be vaccinated. Now, I don't know whether you heard, as I did, the interview earlier this week on the BBC with the boss of Pfizer, who was asked about the possible expansion of the vaccine programme to 5 to 11-year-olds. And you will have heard him say that he thought that was a good idea. And
well, he would, wouldn't he?
He would, wouldn't he? And I thought it was particularly interesting the reasons that he gave, actually. He didn't say for their health and for their own good. He said because coronavirus has become such a disruption to their education. And he also said because they have become the infection pool of coronavirus for adults. So essentially, it's the same old thing again about vaccinating children in exchange for their education and to protect adults. How do you respond to that?
Well, there are two responses to that. So we have seen in this current wave that we've had with Delta that children's cases have now gone down and down and down. Their slope is just going down. So we think that probably 75% have had coronavirus and are therefore immune and probably have a better immunity than had they been vaccinated. There is no evidence that children are the pool of coronavirus spreading it. In fact, teachers were less at risk than other frontline workers to catch coronavirus. And you would assume that if children were the ones who really were spreading it, teachers would be the ones who were falling first off. So the evidence for that isn't very clear and isn't there. But second to that, we're also seeing that you can still catch coronavirus when you've had a vaccine.
Indeed.
And plenty of people are. And children that are testing positive at school or their contacts are testing positive now have to stay off school. So it's not stopping their education in any way. And many of them are having side effects after the vaccine, not serious ones, just, you know, the achy arm, the headache, the flu, etc., that are seeing them off school for a few days. So it's not changing the missing education. So I don't accept either of those arguments.
Thank you, Dr. Renee, and I hope we have you back on again. And, you know, we always want to put both sides of the story. So, of course, we must follow, in many ways, the government guidelines on this, but just acknowledging that there is another side to the story.
There are two.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Right, regarding the rollout of the Pfizer jab to children, the MHRA, that's the regulator, said any such decision would be subject to our robust regulatory standards. In the meantime, we're looking at the data from other countries to ensure that when an application is received, we are making the best decision for children in the UK. And that's the end of their statement. So every year, Norway kindly send us a Christmas tree, but this year's offering, now adorning Trafalgar Square in London, has been described as a bog brush. More on this in a moment, but first let's take a look at the weather.
Hello again. Things turn colder once more this weekend, but it's fairly mild out there today for most. It's damp and drizzly across parts of the south. There are some showers in the north. Hello again. Things turn colder once more this weekend, but it's fairly mild out there today for most. It's damp and drizzly across parts of the south. There are some showers in the northwest, but otherwise much of the country dry. Most of us saw some wet weather from this weather front that's moved through, but it's linked back to this little bump, this little wave, and that will bring more rain to the southwest, especially through the afternoon. Always fairly grey and drizzly along the south coast, but further north something a little brighter, some good spells of sunshine for eastern Scotland, much of Northern Ireland. Western Scotland, though, seeing a few showers keeping going here, and they'll pep up once more later in the day. Temperature-wise, as I said, higher than yesterday, double digits across the south, generally further north, 7 to 8 Celsius. The winds are lighter, though, than they have been, so it doesn't feel as cold as recent days. We are going to see the breeze picking up along the south coast with further rain moving in here through the evening, and the showers further north are going to become more extensive, so many places turning fairly wet by Saturday morning. The winds will also be picking up. Temperatures not dropping too far, 3 to 5 Celsius, but it's going to feel cold on Saturday because of the strength of the wind and because there'll be quite a few showers around too. Initially pretty wet across eastern England, and then this zone of showers coming into parts of northern England, southern Scotland. Some snow likely on the hills, but it won't rain all day. There'll be some bright and sunny spells, particularly across the southeast in the afternoon. Central parts of Scotland also seeing good spells of sunshine too. But it will be breezy, quite a cold wind picking up, especially on western coasts. Still some wet weather over northeast England, with the possibility of a bit of snow on the hills for a time through Saturday evening. Some uncertainty about the extent of that rain, though, during Saturday night. Otherwise, a few showers keep going in the west. That low pressure ebbing away on Sunday. Many places in the west dry on Sunday, but eyes out in the Atlantic as a deep air of low pressure could bring a windy spell next week.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Now, people might be fretting about catching COVID, but there's another threat which hasn't gone away either, and that is the threat of a terror attack. Following 2 such atrocities in recent weeks, the threat level currently stands at severe. Our Home Affairs and Security Editor, Mark White, sent this report.
We're on the road with a team from Scotland Yard's Specialist Operations Division, a counter-terrorism patrol in the heart of central London.
Stevie, if you know, we're going to go down that little side road by the Trocadero.
They've been tasked with patrolling parts of the West End, on the lookout for anything suspicious.
Well, it's just a case of the fact that we can get further with the vehicle. You might see different things when you're out on foot, when we're out on the vehicle, but it's a whole package.
The deployment includes foot patrols.
Hello guys, how you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. You?
Good, thank you.
With the terror threat level recently raised to severe, these patrols have taken on added significance. There are also plainclothes covert teams here, reporting back anything that seems out of place.
So as project servitor officers, we deploy in unpredictable fashion into areas where there's quite high footfall. As I say, I can't go into specific details on how we work due to security reasons, but as you see, you'll see uniformed officers, but we do have a range of other assets available to us.
It was the terrorist killing of Conservative MP Sir David Amess, followed by the bomb attack outside Liverpool Women's Hospital, that prompted security officials to raise the terror threat level. And so across the country, in the run-up to Christmas in particular, the public are being urged to be extra vigilant.
I mean, this is the first Christmas in a couple of years where lots of people are going to be together. There's lots of big events going on, and we want people to go and enjoy them. But we also know that the terrorist threat level has been raised to severe after the 2 awful attacks we've seen, one in Essex and one in Liverpool. And we just want the public to be vigilant. We mean that severe means an attack is highly likely, but it doesn't mean they shouldn't go about carrying on their normal business. What it means is that if you're worried about something, if you're suspicious about something, then tell us about it. And the message is very clear. By phoning us, by telling us there's something that doesn't feel right, you're not going to ruin somebody's life, but you may just save some.
In Manchester, the Christmas markets are highly popular. After a hiatus because of COVID, there is added enthusiasm this year. But an awareness too that crowded places like these are potential targets for terrorists.
I feel safe, but then it's a midweek day, so people are more spaced out. I think I'd probably not feel as safe if it was a weekend, if it was very crowded.
Definitely more vigilant. I tend to, I'm more aware of like baggage and things like that.
You've just got to crack on. You can't let these things slow you down.
Back in London's Leicester Square, another element of these patrols is about raising public awareness of the potential threats.
We're part of a security team based on Metropolitan Police from Charing Cross Police Station. When you're out today, if you see anything that does look suspicious, no matter what it is, please give us a call.
Right across the UK, in mainly urban centres of population, there will be a noticeable increase in these police patrols. But authorities say, far from being alarmed, the public should be reassured by this enhanced security.
With the terror threat level at severe, sadly, authorities know that it is only a matter of when, rather than if, there's another attack. And so the public, they say, have a potentially vital role in spotting anything that might prevent another tragedy. Mark White, GB News.
Now for something a bit lighter. If you live in central London or you've been out Christmas shopping, you might have seen the Christmas tree in Trafalgar Square that went up this week. It's our annual Christmas present from Norway, a long tradition that recognises our role supporting Norway during the Second World War. So they've been giving us a tree every year since 1947, which is a lovely gesture. The thing is, this year's tree is a bit, well, scrawny. Threadbare, half dead, like a toilet brush are some of the less flattering descriptions on social media. Some have speculated that Norway must be trying to send us some kind of political message. Have we offended them in some way? Well, the tree has come in for some pretty sharp criticism on social media. Somebody called Burnside tweeted to say, "The bog brush is resplendent this morning," while My West London on Twitter asked, "Are we at war with Norway?" But the British ambassador to Norway, Richard Wood, has leapt to the tree's defence, saying it was good. A good thing that Twitter isn't real life, he said, and insisting that the tree is appreciated by the vast majority. Well, with me to discuss Treegate is the Tory MP Andrew Rosendale, who is Vice Chairman of Westminster's all-party parliamentary group on Norway. Good morning, Andrew. What do you make of the tree?
Good morning, Isabel.
Good morning. What do you make of the tree in Trafalgar Square? Have you seen it?
I have seen the tree, and what I would say is this, is it's a great symbol of the friendship between the Norwegian and the British people. They give us this tree every year, and it's always resplendent in Trafalgar Square, but okay, this year it does look a bit bedraggled. I don't quite know why, but it's still a fantastic gesture from the Norwegian people to the people of the United Kingdom. We are great friends and allies and have been for many centuries, and I think the focus should be on the friendship between the two countries rather than the fact that the tree looks a little bit worse for wear this year. I'm sure that it's going to improve with time.
Well, I'm not sure it is going to improve with time. I mean, whose Christmas tree ever improves with time? Every Christmas tree gets worse with time, doesn't it?
Maybe a few more baubles and a bit more tinsel will make it look better, but I do think that the main point here is that we have this incredible friendship between the two countries, and this is a wonderful gesture. Every year the people of Norway send us one of their finest Christmas trees to stand proudly in Trafalgar Square, and whilst this year it does look a little bit scrawny, I agree, it's nevertheless the thought that counts, and I'd like to pay tribute to the people of Norway for their friendship to Britain over so many years, and particularly we are allies in NATO, we're non-EU countries, neither of us are members of the European Union, so we have a lot in common, and of course the British royal family and the Norwegian royal family are also very close and related very strongly indeed. So I think those are the things we should be focusing on rather than the slightly scrawny Christmas tree that we have this year.
Well, I don't think anyone wants to sound ungrateful to the Norwegians. So for our Norwegian viewers, thank you very much for the tree. And just before I let you go, Andrew, why are you at the Royal Hospital in Chelsea this morning? Something to do with festive cheese. Very briefly, can you tell us?
Yeah, well, this is a magnificent event at the Royal Hospital. I'm with the Chelsea pensioners. And every year, British cheese producers from around the UK come and present their produce for the Chelsea pensioners to enjoy over the Christmas period. So it's a great occasion with great ceremony, and to be here with our magnificent Chelsea pensioners is a great honour. And also it's promoting British cheese, British produce, and it's wonderful to meet the farmers that also have arrived to present the cheese to the pensioners. So it's a great occasion, and I'm very proud to be here and to support not only our pensioners but also our British cheese manufacturers from around the United Kingdom.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and thanks for putting a positive gloss on the scrawny Christmas tree. Coming up, we'll have the latest in my special series of interviews, The Cause, where I talk to politicians and people of influence about issues they care about. Today will be former Veterans Minister Johnny Mercer, who's going to explain why he believes Commonwealth soldiers should be granted British citizenship. But first, the news with Rhiannon.
I'm Rhiannon Jones, and here are your headlines. One of the UK's most senior counter-terrorism officer has told GBNews the public could play a vital role in preventing another terror attack. Scotland Yard's Deputy Assistant Commissioner Matt Twist is urging the public to be extra vigilant in the run-up to Christmas, but he says people shouldn't change their plans. The current terror threat level of severe means another incident is highly likely. A damning report into the Euro 2020 final held at Wembley has described it as a day of national shame. The independent review commissioned by the FA said there'd been a collective failure by all organisations involved in planning for the final. Around 2,000 ticketless fans forced their way into the National Stadium. The Conservatives have held the seat of Old Bexley and Sidcup in a by-election despite a significantly reduced majority. It was triggered by the death of former Cabinet Minister James Brokenshire. Local councillor Louis French is the area's new MP with a majority of just under 4,500. That's down from 19,000 in the last election. The killers of 6-year-old Arthur Labinjo Hughes are currently being sentenced, with impact statements being read out loud. Prosecutors argued the little boy suffered a campaign of torture before he died of brain injury in June 2020. Arthur's stepmother, Emma Tuston, was convicted yesterday of murder. His father, 29-year-old Thomas Hughes, was found guilty of manslaughter. The Pfizer and Moderna vaccines give the best overall booster against COVID-19. That's according to a new study. It found that those two jabs led to the most significant rise in immunity levels. Omicron wasn't tested in the trial, but experts say that boosters offer good protection against the new variant. I'll be back with a full update for you at the top of the hour. See you then.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Now, the latest in the series of my special interviews, The Cause, where I talk to a politician about an issue dear to their heart. Today, former Veterans Minister Johnny Mercer explains why he wants citizenship to be granted to Commonwealth soldiers. The issue here being that it costs them an awful lot of money, and many of them find that they have to leave the UK. Johnny Mercer, talk to me about the plight of Commonwealth veterans, and this is a cause that's really close to your heart.
Yeah, so look, foreign and Commonwealth personnel serve in our military. They're a huge part of the fabric of the British military and brings that real sort of diversity and often winning edge to what we do. But the trouble is when they leave, if they want to settle here, okay, they are currently subject to visa fees, which have exponentially increased, particularly since 2010. So unfortunately, you're in the position now where, you know, you can leave, you've got a wife and 2 kids, you will have to pay over £10,000 for them to actually stay here. And some of those children will have been born here, right? So it's a huge burden, real worry for them.
So just casting back to why those people join the armed forces in the first place, do many of them join thinking that there's a possibility, or even more than a possibility, that they will ultimately be able to settle in the UK? Or is that not something that they generally come to until much later in their service?
Yeah, so to be fair to the military and to the government, I think it is made clear that people will have to save up for these fees. The problem is that they have gone up so much in a short period of time. So whereas it was something you perhaps didn't really think about
15 years ago or 10 years ago when you first joined. Now it is a huge barrier to the point where people are leaving. I met someone last year in the Navy who was leaving and actually had to send his wife and children back to Antigua and work in the UK to get that money to get them to come over and settle. So obviously the majority of people would think that actually if you serve, you know, for a short period of time, you should be, if you're going to die for the country, you should probably have a right to live here. And, you know, that's what I'd like to see the government do.
And is that if you've got the funds to pay, the set of fees that you have to pay when you apply for permanent leave to remain, is that an automatic entitlement in principle for everybody who serves a certain number of years? Or
so yeah, you can apply for ILR. And after 4 or 5 years, depending on your status, and you then get indefinite leave to remain. But like I say, it is this issue of the fees, which are very high.
So we're talking about how much per person?
So you're talking, so it changes between adults and children. For a family of 4, it's about £10,500.
And for people in that position, generally in the armed forces, they would have been earning how much?
Well, anything between 21 and up to 32, 34,000 pounds a year.
So pretty hard to save that kind of capital.
Incredibly hard to save that capital if you've then got your sort of increased costs of having children and so on. You know, and there are 2 sides to this where the army will say, well, you should have saved for it, and there's mechanisms to help you save for it. Unfortunately, that policy doesn't really work with the real world where people are genuinely struggling, and these aren't particularly high paid jobs. And essentially, we are getting to the point where lots and lots of our foreign and Commonwealth people cannot stay because they can't afford that £10,500.
And just to be clear, the cases that you've followed and have campaigned on behalf of, these are people that have put their lives on the line for the United Kingdom.
Oh, there's been some horrendous cases. I mean, there was the case last year that got into, was championed in the media about the individual who required surgery, but he didn't have a right to public funds. And
he required surgery as a result of, right?
No, not as a result of his service injury. He had an accident over here. He required surgery, but he wasn't entitled to have recourse to public funds. He was, hit with a huge bill. That got sorted out in the end, but actually there's lots of those whose cases don't hit the national headlines. And my concern really is for them and the worry that they inevitably have that when they come to the end of their service, they're going to have to split up their family.
And how far did you progress with this issue when you were in the Ministry of Defence? Because you were in a position to change things there.
Yeah, so I pushed as hard as I possibly could. I actually, tried to engineer a space, if you like, for the Home Office and the Ministry of Defence, who argued over this for many years as to who should actually fit the cost of this. It's a very small cost, but they're sort of arguing about it. It's meant we haven't got a solution. The Office of Veterans Affairs, I hope, could kind of step into that space, do it for serving personnel, then look at how you do it for veterans. But look, our government was a pretty painful experience, and there's a big gap, I'm afraid, between what we say in public and what we actually do for these people. And that's the gap I'm trying to close, is to make these people actually get looked after by the government in the way they should do.
And your campaign is entering another phase next week, isn't it? Can you explain what the process is? There's a bill coming up that you're hoping to attach some amendment to?
That's right. So I'm going to put down an amendment to the Immigration and Borders Bill next week, which essentially states that if you serve 5 years, you and your dependents should have your visa fees waived. So pretty basic, pretty clear. It's been Conservative Party policy for a long time. So I'm hopeful my colleagues are going to support it. I suspect the opposition will support it. Everybody knows it's the right thing to do, but no one's quite prepared to take that step over the line and commit to it. So I will try and get the government to do that next week. I don't know what my chance of success will be, but we'll give it a good go.
I mean, these sums of money, whilst they're huge for the individuals concerned, for the government, they're absolute pennies, aren't they? I mean, we're talking, how many people are we talking a year that might want to take advantage of their right to do this? So
you're talking about a very small amount of people. The exact figures the MOD has, but it's less than 900 families a year who are looking to settle here. If you think about those who are coming here illegally at the moment, and you contrast that picture, if you look at how much money it would actually cost to resettle these people versus how much, for example, the British Legion give in their money to supporting those who are going through this process. The money isn't an issue. It's a question of actually, you know, the department's Home Office and the MOD actually sitting down and working out who's going to do it. And, you know, when I was in government, I was constantly kind of promised this was just around the corner, it's just around the corner, stick with it, Johnny. Well, a year later, we're still here and we haven't sorted it out, and these guys are still having to split up their families.
Which is extraordinary. I mean, it seems to me almost like a kind of Windrush situation here.
Well, it's like a lot of these issues with veterans, Isabel. I feel that if people really knew about them, you know, if you look at what we've just done to people going through trials in Northern Ireland, if they knew what we were doing to veterans and people who served in this country, they would genuinely be outraged by it, because it's quite a small proportion of people, and veterans generally are quite service-minded and don't want to, you know, make a big song and dance about everything. People just don't know. If they did, if they knew we were splitting up families, right, at the end of their military service because they couldn't stay in the UK because they couldn't afford the visa fees, people would be absolutely outraged.
And you did, I think, 3 tours of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Did you have any experiences fighting alongside Commonwealth armed force personnel?
Yeah, I mean, all the time. When you're on service abroad, of course you do. And of course, a lot of our foreign and Commonwealth brothers and sisters lost their lives in operations. You know, the community in the armed forces from our foreign and Commonwealth nations, they're not just kind of like the add-on that people think they are. They are fundamental to the fabric of the British Army and the Navy and the Air Force. And you know, that they get treated like this, it stinks, right? And, you know, it has pretty unpleasant odours of a time gone by where we treated people differently based on their nationality. It is clearly out of keeping with where we are now in the modern armed forces. And the government needs to recognise that. And instead of just talking about how we will look after them, so on and so forth, actually do something to look after them. And this would be a really easy thing to do.
Are you saying it's almost racism?
No, I wouldn't say. I don't think the military's racist in any way. I think that those who serve under the flag should have the same terms and conditions, irrespective of their background.
Now, you mentioned the work that you've been doing in Northern Ireland, which I think has been very painful with some of the cases that you have been involved in championing there. In one case, Dennis Hutchins, he actually passed away in the middle of court proceedings while they were ongoing. How do you feel now? That's a little bit of time has passed. How do you feel about how that was handled?
I feel incredibly sad about it. I don't think he was particularly well looked after in Northern Ireland by well, the military, which has a statutory duty to look after him. He was clearly unwell.
He was being investigated for historic allegations of...
He was being investigated for firing warning shots in an incident that happened 47 years ago. So, I mean, pretty tenuous stuff. And in my view, the case was about to collapse, and I'd sat through all the prosecution evidence. But to watch his health and him deteriorate, like, it's one thing to read about it in a newspaper or see it on the TV, to actually see this, like, total abandonment of our veterans, see him in the dock and see the processes going on around him. It is the most appalling betrayal. And I defy anybody from the Prime Minister downwards to actually watch that and think that we haven't desperately failed this generation of Northern Ireland veterans.
And yet the Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, subsequently wrote to the family and suggested that you had not had the right motivations for your involvement in this case. Yeah,
I mean, look, I think that's politics. I think Defence Secretary would probably admit he's got a temper on him, and he sometimes says things that I'm sure upon reflection he probably feels he shouldn't. But you know, as a soldier, to actually cross that line and suggest that to the bereaved family, I think was one of the most appalling things I've seen. Yeah, basically that people like me were supporting Dennis for attention and things like that, which, you know, is all pretty sickening. But look, you just can't take these things personally, right? You know, people do, but we're all accountable for what we do. That's a decision Ben Wallace decided to make, to write that letter. That's up to him, and I will speak to him in private about that in due course.
You haven't tried to reach out to him?
No, I did go and try and find him, but he was out of the country, and I haven't been back since. So
probably a good thing for him that he was.
Well, no, I just think these things are best dealt with face to face, so everyone's very clear. as to what, you know, there's no room for misunderstanding.
You said he's got a temper.
Well, look, I mean, if you write a letter like that to someone who's just lost their family member, I think you've slightly lost your perspective on the job you're trying to do and what it's like to actually see your father or grandfather go through a vexatious trial in Northern Ireland. And I know it upset the family greatly. For me, you know, I'm big and ugly enough to take it. I'm not really bothered what Ben Wallace thinks of me, but you know, I do think that we should treat these people with a bit more respect, and I will stand up for them.
Well, hopefully next week will be a good opportunity to bring some justice in terms of the Commonwealth veterans. Thank you very much for your time on the cause. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that was quite a powerful interview there. Johnny Mercer, former Armed Forces Minister, saying that Defence Secretary Ben Wallace has quite a temper on him. Well, now I'm delighted to be joined by the recently retired Lieutenant Colonel Lyndon Robinson, who was the commanding officer of Bicester Garrison. Lyndon has served on combat tours with soldiers from the Commonwealth, as well as ensuring the welfare of the soldiers and their families back on base in the UK. Hello and welcome to GB News. Thanks for joining us. I hope you were able to hear that interview with Johnny Mercer there, were you?
Yes, I was, Isabel. Yeah, with great interest.
Absolutely, and you can tell the passion that Mr. Mercer has for this cause. I was very interested in your perspective on the role that Commonwealth soldiers bring to our armed forces, because as Johnny said, people may see them as something of an add-on, but that isn't the case, is it?
No, not at all, Isabel. I mean, the Commonwealth soldiers are completely integrated into the army. And the British soldiers, or those of traditional British heritage, are extraordinarily fond of the Fijians and other Commonwealth soldiers, as indeed am I. They're a fantastic component of our fighting power, and it's a great honour for me to have served amongst them.
Now, these personnel know when they join the UK Armed Forces that they will have the right to apply to remain at the end of their service. The issue has been that they aren't always aware how much it's going to cost them, and indeed that figure has gone up extremely sharply over the years. What do you think needs to be done about this? Should we just not only wipe out that for current serving personnel, but retrospectively try to help these individuals and their families?
Well, I think those in authority would need to look at the situation and come to a view as to how to improve it. I'm a retired soldier, a retired officer. This is touching into the space of politics. It's an area about which I'm not as comfortable, certainly not as comfortable as Johnny Mercer. But if there is a perceived wrong in the military, then folks in authority would want to look at it, I'm sure. And maybe it's a communication challenge within the army as to the entitlements for our Commonwealth troops.
And you know, the armed forces find it quite difficult to recruit at the moment. Is it easier to recruit in our Commonwealth nations, or is that quite challenging?
I've, in 36 years of service, have never become aware of a problem with recruiting in the Commonwealth. The Fijians, of course, they're the biggest Commonwealth cohort in the British Army. Any Google search would show that there's about 1,300 serving in the British Army. And from a population of 800,000, closing 900,000 in Fiji, that would suggest that that's a really positive recruiting presence. And the Fijian soldiers are extraordinarily welcome and well loved by their colleagues.
And how important do you think it is that we maintain that diversity in our armed forces? You know, some people might think that the inclusion of Commonwealth soldiers is a bit of a throwback, but in a sense it's quite important to a modern armed forces, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And to draw in a political phrase, globalisation, a globalised Britain. Well, when our soldiers deploy on operations, you can see how globalised the army is. And in many ways, I think that would be reassuring to local populations overseas when they see folk that look very much like them.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and very much hoping that next week you will have picked up from that interview with Johnny Mercer that there is a bill next week, and the hope is that there can be an amendment to the bill to right that wrong. Just in terms of that legislation that's going through next week, the MPs will be asked to consider an amendment which would correct that injustice. Would you expect that to get cross-party support? I don't want to ask you political questions here, but do you think that this is something that is likely to be supported across the board?
I think the love that the country has for British soldiers, regardless of their nations of origin, is pretty cross-cutting. And so I wouldn't see this as being a party issue. I just think it would be an issue of what the politicians perceive is a good thing or is not a good thing.
I must just ask you, while you're on, this has been a really difficult year, I think, for the armed forces, with the final and quite chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. What is your perspective on where we are now with Afghanistan, and how do people in your community, in the armed forces veteran community, feel now a little bit of dust has settled? Just very briefly.
I mean, I don't speak for the veterans community, but perhaps I echo a lot of their sentiments. The term moral injury is out there. For me personally, the loss of Afghanistan, withdrawal from Afghanistan, was a source of huge upset and potentially, I suppose, really no potential about it, personal distress. But wars come and wars go, and we have to adapt to the situation that we're currently faced with.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Well, you've been watching The Briefing with me, Isabel Oakeshott. The show is back next Friday at noon. Up next, it's On the Money with Liam Halligan, but for now, I'll leave you with the weather forecast.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. Things turn colder once more this weekend, but it's fairly mild out there today for most. It's damp and drizzly across parts of the south. There are some showers in the northwest, but otherwise much of the country dry. Most of us saw some wet weather from this weather front that's moved through, but it's linked back to this little bump, this little wave, and that will bring more rain to the southwest, especially through the afternoon. Always fairly grey and drizzly along the south coast, but further north something a little brighter, some good spells of sunshine for eastern Scotland, much of Northern Ireland. Western Scotland, though, seeing a few showers keeping going here, and they'll pep up once more later in the day.